Hey everyone, today I'm going to do a video about trekking poles, and specifically I'm going to do a test of a couple of trekking poles and then show you some of the poles that I've been using. I'm not sure why, but I've never actually broken a trekking pole. So for me, it's more about the weight and the locking mechanism than it is about the actual strength of the pole. But I think for a lot of other people who have broken trekking poles, they want to find a pole that is not going to break again. So here I'm doing some testing, and I'll go through each of these trekking poles later in the video, but just wanted to comment that what I'm measuring here is basically beam deflection, which is putting a 26.8-pound load on the middle of this beam and seeing how much it deflects. Now, it's not a very rigorous test. I'm not actually measuring deflection, and the actual mechanism in which a trekking pole typically breaks is buckling. But I think this should give you a good sense for how stiff these poles are, and as a result, how likely it is to stand up to some abuse. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I don't actually have a gear review on any trekking poles on my channel so far. And the reason is twofold. The first is that all the reviews I do take a lot of time to make, so I only want to show products that I think are best in class, which I would recommend to you to buy. And the second thing is that I'm only going to recommend products which you can actually buy. So two of the trekking poles that I'm testing here are discontinued or are no longer available for purchase. So while I do like these poles, it doesn't make sense for me to recommend them if you can't buy them. And there's also two poles here which I haven't actually put through the ringer yet. As you know, a lot of my gear review is about thoroughly field testing gear, so I'd like to bring it out and beat the crap out of my gear. These two poles by Ultimate Direction are brand new, and I haven't actually had the chance to take them out into the field. So the most I've been able to do is some deflection testing, and we will see how they actually perform. Although, again, based on my experience, it's unlikely that I'll break these poles because I haven't broken the other poles either. So you guys are really smart viewers, and I know that because it takes some amount of effort to actually find my channel and to find and appreciate these videos. So I'm not going to belabor you by giving you a primer on trekking poles or talking about the pros and cons of different locking mechanisms or different folding mechanisms. I trust that you'll be able to find that kind of content online because it already exists. Instead, I want to do some value add here by showing you some poles that you can't find videos about, and then doing some deflection testing, which you don't see a lot of either. That is my contribution here in this video. Hope you enjoy. As you can see, the greater the diameter of the shaft, the more stiff the pole tends to be. And of course, I should point out that carbon fiber can be laid up in different ways, and there are different types of aluminum alloys, so it's not always a fair apples-to-apples comparison here. Alright, now let's take a look at the Ultimate Direction FK trekking poles. This is a fixed length, single piece trekking pole, and the one that I have is 125 centimeters, which is the exact same length as my ski pole. The weight of these poles is really impressive. They only weigh 8.8 ounces for the pair. Now, there are other trekking poles that are very, very light as well, but none can compare to this in terms of stiffness. So these straps are adjustable, and there are different ways to use the straps as well. So depending on your preferences, you can use them however you like. I do think that if you want to remove these straps, you don't have to cut them off, but I'm not quite sure how you'll get them back on if you do take them out. The bottom section of these poles is wrapped with an aramid fabric, which gives it greater abrasion resistance. And this is because it's a fixed length pole, so you can't replace any sections if they get damaged. However, what you can do is you can replace that tip. So that tip is actually replaceable. You can unscrew it, and you're supposed to put a little bit of super glue when you screw it back on. It goes without saying that long-term durability testing is necessary to test out these tips, but since they're replaceable, I don't think that's actually a big deal. The FK trekking pole includes a pair of snow baskets and mud baskets, and the weights are listed on the screen. Okay, now let's take a look at the FK Ultra pole, which is Ultimate Direction's foldable pole. And this is also a fixed length pole, so these are 125 centimeters, but when they're folded, they're about a third of that length. In terms of weight, this is competitive, but not the absolute lightest that you'll find for a folding fixed length pole. I will say that most pole manufacturers quote the weight at a shorter length, not at the 125 centimeter length. And here there's a metal button that snaps out when you pull it out and extend it all the way, and this will keep it from rotating. Now when I wiggle this pole, there's a little bit of play and you can feel the inner parts of the pole move around, but still it's a very stiff pole. It's just not quite as stiff as the FK trekking pole. And I've been adjusting the tension to try and remove that play, but it seems like I've totally maxed out the tension and there's still some play. Alright, and this is what the inside looks like. So there's a cord that connects all three pieces together, and there's this little plastic bit that you can rotate to adjust the tension in the cord and also to take out the bottom half and replace that section. The FK Ultra Pole includes the same snow basket and mud basket accessories, but also comes with replacement tips. So let's compare these two poles. And let's start with the fact that they have two different approaches to improving abrasion resistance or durability. With the FK trekking pole, the aramid fabric improves abrasion resistance. With the FK Ultra Pole, rather than doing that, they've just made the final section replaceable. And these are both 125 centimeter poles, but the FK Ultra Pole is actually a little bit longer than the FK trekking pole. Okay, so now let's look at some other trekking poles just as a means of comparison. This is a Canway trekking pole. It's all carbon, has a flick lock locking mechanism, and is a 3-piece retractable trekking pole. Now the flick lock mechanism is plastic with a little metal knob. I primarily use this trekking pole in the winter when I need and prefer an external mechanism instead of an internal locking mechanism. But the cool thing about this pole is that it has this camera adapter on top. Next up we have the Pamase carbon trekking poles. And these ones were made in China, but the really cool thing about it is that it only costs $30 for the pair and they're incredibly light. But the downside is that they have the internal twist lock mechanism, and if you over torque it, it will break, and if it gets wet, it can slip. So I don't use these poles in the winter usually. So here's a look at the internal locking mechanism. This is generally a similar mechanism as you'll find in other trekking poles that have an internal locking mechanism. It basically has this cone that goes down and will expand when you twist it. So this is the amount of tension that I put on when I lock it. I don't put on too much, and it's really key to find the right amount of tension on these poles. And I've had these poles for several hundred miles, so this is a difference in the tips. The one on the left is the one that I've used much more than the one on the right. Alright, and finally we have my Lakey Sparklite ski poles. So these are the ski poles that I use for downhill resort skiing. And there's one really neat feature about these ski poles, which is the trigger rest. And this is a system that allows the ski strap to disconnect if you crash or if you press the button. So that's it for this video. I'm really looking forward to testing these new Ultimate Direction poles. I think they're going to be a game changer for trail runners, for hikers, and for skiers alike. As always, feel free to let me know what you thought about this video and leave any questions or comments down below. And if you want to see more of these first look videos, let me know and I can definitely go ahead and make them because they take a lot less time than a full review video. Alright, take care. See you in the next video.